I'm Jack Kennedy, and we're here to bring you the latest in MMA.
Hey everybody, my name's Hunter Boss, and what the boss says goes.
What is up everyone, my name is Keelan McNamara, and you already know what time it is.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MMA Island Podcast. I am Jack Kennedy alongside Keelan McNamara and Hunter Boss. And today we are welcoming on a very special guest. This man is a journalist, content creator, works with Bellator sometimes, massive friend of the podcast. Also a big shout out to Benny Boy's Barbershop and the Flex Fight series. Kevin Varghese, thank you so much for joining us today.
What is up, MMA Island Podcast team? We got the trifecta going out here, the three musketeers of the MMA Island team. How we doing today? You know, we got beautiful weather out here in Long Island, New York. Working on some big things, obviously, but until the time is right, we won't talk about it. Right. But hey, other than that, yeah, I mean, hey, you know, we got a lot of things going on. The MMA world is a buzz. We had a great UFC card. You know, after a week of, you know, no action at all from like a lot of sports were on break, but we come back, you know, and the UFC serves up a masterclass of action.
Yeah. Well, we knew UFC 273 was going to deliver. I mean, the card was stacked looking back on it. And let's go ahead and talk about that, starting with the news. We're talking the main and co-main event. We're going to discuss what we think about the results. Obviously, Aljamain Sterling upsets Petr Yan with the decision. Volkanovski beats the Korean Zombie. Kevin, what are your thoughts on these results?
I think, you know, the fight could have gone to either opponent, either fighter. And it was such, and here's one thing. I think Aljamain Sterling shut up the haters with his performance because everybody thought that it would be a cakewalk for Yan, which it wasn't. I think this was the Aljamain Sterling that should have shown up the first fight. And instead, like I think he just outworked himself to the point where he didn't, when it came down to the really gritty rounds, like for this fight, he just didn't have it in him to just stay on par with Petr Yan. Mm-hmm. And, but the only, and I might be in the minority on this opinion, but this fight, as much as it unified the crown, it didn't unify the division. So, like, you know, there's still a few that don't see Aljamain Sterling as the true king of the bantamweights, right? He's going to need a win against the TJ Dillashaw. That's why, you know, moving towards that direction is the positive way. But Aljamain Sterling still has, like, even, you know, when the boss man himself admits, hey, I had Yan winning that fight, it says a lot. And, you know, you have, like, you know, just like the main event, Alexander Volkanovski had the Brian Ortega fight just after the Max Holloway fight, right? He needs that Brian Ortega type fight, like with a possibly TJ Dillashaw. And for Petr Yan, I my heart goes out to him. It was a tough, well, especially with all the emotion he clearly had invested in the fight. I think in the best way possible. And I apply this to anybody who wants to truly call out Khabib. Go after the right-hand man. Go after the protege. Go after Merab. Yeah. Understand? If you want the attention of the king, go after his right-hand man. So for me, I would say if the best way, like if Conor wants to get Khabib's attention and truly get it, anybody wants to get Khabib's attention, go out and slaughter Islam. Make a showing out of him. It's like, you know, if you watch the movie Troy, what do you say? What's his name? Achilles takes the Trojan prince, slaughters his body, and then takes it around and showcases it. Like, who are you going to send next? That's what he needs to do with Petr Yan. Petr Yan needs to take Merab, and if he really wants the next, no doubt, he wants the next match with Aljamain. he destroys Mirab. And for Aljo, he needs that Brian Ortega fight with with the TJ Dillashaw or anybody who's ready for him.
Yeah, no, Kevin, I couldn't agree more. Kevin, you mentioned a certain type of fan that may not believe that Aljo is still the champion. You would be talking to one right here. I do not believe it. I could see how you could score it that way. I just don't necessarily agree with it. And I'm not like in hard denial that he's not the champion. It's just, like you said, Kevin, he hasn't proven it to me yet. I mean, if the boss is still saying that, I had Jan winning that, that's a big thing to say to your whole audience. That's not like selling Aljamain Sterling for being the champion here. I mean, back in the day, people used to say that about Jan. They're like, oh, Jan never beat an actual contender for the belt, and now he's fighting Aljamain Sterling. He's going to get blown out of the water. It's so funny how a year can change up from all that. So to talk about it all on a whole, though, I had Jan winning rounds 1, 4, and 5, both the championship rounds, as well as the first round, which I would not have predicted. But if you wanted to give it to Aljo, what I had going here, I had a 10-8 in round 2 and potentially another 10-8 in round 3. But since the judges didn't score any rounds for a 10-8, I just can't see how Aljamain Sterling won that fight. But you know what? It was a close fight. I'll give it to that. Though I'll probably run it back in the near future because I think that Jan will stay at the top of the division still. And Aljamain Sterling is also as good as that too. Aljamain Sterling will either be champion by his next fighter, number 1 contender or number 2 contender. So we'll see that fight down the line again. The trilogy, people will want to see it because there's bad blood there. The Volkanovski versus Korean Zombie one, that was a fantastic fight too, guys. I mean, what an amazing performance by Volkanovski. The Korean Zombie did his best to hang in there, and he had the heart, and he led up to his nickname, the Zombie. He kept walking forward, even though Volkanovski would hit him with some sledgehammer of hooks and uppercuts. But Volkanovski, man, that man is dangerous for the featherweight division. If you didn't think he was champion now there shouldn't be very much doubt. The Holloway fight will be coming up next. I really hope that or Yair Rodriguez, I guess. But I still want to see the Holloway rematch because I did have Holloway winning the second fight. So before, if you asked me about a week ago whether or not Holloway would beat Volkanovski, I would say Holloway. Now I'm re-questioning that decision. Volkanovski's really proven that he can hang with the best of the best. He's levels above his whole competition other than, I would say, Max Holloway. I think him and Max Holloway are near or close to the same level, but everyone else way below them, honestly, way below them. So Volkanovski had a great performance, round 4 TKO, I believe. Peter Yan lost the decision. Aljamain Sterling and still here. Very controversial for the Sterling fight, but all in all, a fantastic card.
Yeah, first of all, Kevin, no offense, but I am a Catholic, so the last thing I'm going to talk about is slaughtering Islam. Assalamu alaikum and all that. Peace and love to all my people, okay? That's not the vibe I'm going for here. On to the fight business, which is, of course, why we are all here gathered today in this peaceful congregation of combat. Aljamain Sterling, Peter Yan. God, where do I start with this? First of all, I'm going to have to agree. I'm going to have to disagree with my colleague, Mr. Hunter Boss, because I think Aljamain Sterling did win. And I don't think he won because of 10-8. I think he won because he won the first round. And I'm going to tell you why. Ladies and gentlemen, far too many people run away with this argument of octagon control and this argument of simply walking an opponent down. Peter Yan didn't do enough with the octagon pressure to simply give him a round. If all you're going to do is measure a round's worth by walking an opponent down, then the amount of wrongly scored fights we would have is incomprehensible. You can go back to any fight you want and you'll see what I mean. Not only this, but even when there was said pressure from Peter Yan, which was there, Aljamain Sterling, I think, was more productive in that pressure. He landed more leg kicks. He actually landed more despite being backed up. You can still do better work being backed up rather than just walking forward. If Peter Yan had been slightly more productive with the octagon pressure, then fair enough, that's a different argument. But I actually think Aljamain Sterling seized the initiative a little bit more in the first round, and therefore you give him that round. As for rounds 2 and 3, no debate, they're Aljamain Sterling's, but they're not 10-8s, and I'm going to tell you why. A 10-8 is scored as within there being a scenario where the referee could justifiably stop the point or stop the fight, or your opponent is in serious trouble. Neither of those criteria were met in round 2 or round 3. Yes, round 2 and 3, Aljamain Sterling had a combined, I think, 7 minutes of ground control time, which is unbelievable, don't get me wrong. But there was no damage being done. Yes, in the third round, he was landing punches, but they weren't hurting Petr Yan. They weren't potentially fight ending. So I agree with Hunter in that there are no 10-8s, and the judges scored it that way because they weren't 10-8s. 4 and 5, Petr Yan cranks up the heat, easily his rounds, no 10-8s there either. Did back up Aljamain Sterling. Yes, Aljamain Sterling was shooting for takedowns, but what did you expect? To stand and get knocked out to prove a point? Absolutely not. This is mixed martial arts. You use your best weapons against your opponents, and that's what Aljamain Sterling did. So, as far as I'm concerned, it may not have been the most convincing performance. It may not have been the most aesthetically pleasing performance, but it was an effective, pragmatic performance. And that's what makes champions. And that's why Aljamain Sterling won. Right, wrong, or indifferent, get your forms into him by the end of the workday for criticizing him and hating on him, because he is the champion. Like it or not, he holds the strap, Hunter. Love him, hate him, he is the champion. Now on to a champion whom nobody disrespects. Alexander the Great Volkanovski, and he truly is becoming the great. He is summoning the energy of the nickname source, Alexander the Great, the old king of Macedonia, Greece, and that part of Eurasia. Alexander Volkanovski's a cut above. He really, really is. He is the greatest 145-pounder on planet Earth, and there is no debate about it anymore, in my opinion. Yes, I see my colleague, Mr. Varghese, looking questioningly, longing for the Max Holloway fight, and I understand that. But how many more times are we going to question Mr. Volkanovski and what he is capable of? For me, I'm not. For me, I'm on the side of Jack's argument when it actually came to Petr Yan. Until I see someone put him in real trouble and really hurt him, I am betting against Volkanovski. You can if you want, but I'm in my own little corner here with Volkanovski, especially Bald Volk. Bald Volk is like Super Saiyan Volkanovski, and I ain't betting against him. As for the performance, absolutely flawless. No arguments with it at all. Dominated every round, ate some big, big shots, and still came through, knocked out the Korean Zombie. How often do we see that happen? Volkanovski did something very few people do. So to sum up my opinion on this segment, Alexander Volkanovski, best 145er on the planet, in my opinion, can do it all, has now done it all. Aljamain Sterling is the champion. It's on Petr Yan to go and get that belt back. He's more than capable of it. Let's see the trilogy at some point. But I like the point Kevin just made. You want to go for the king, take out the pillar that supports him. One of his best friends, Merab Dvalishvili. Go and get that fight. Go and do a Jose Aldo on him, and I'll see you for the trilogy.
Hold on, just a quick point. For me, for anybody in the 145-pound division to be considered the greatest champion of all time, the groundwork has been laid that in order to achieve greatness, you need to go up a division. Right now, Conor has done it. Max has done it. Even though Max didn't, complete the, mission, the journey has been laid that it's only 10 pounds. If you really, truly are the greatest, you can, compensate for the 10 pounds and get another 10 pounds of gold or 14 pounds of gold, whatever it may be. But yeah, the point of the matter is for Volkanovski truly to gain that GOAT status, to, put him among the elite, in my opinion, he needs to go up that 10 pounds, probably challenge Charles Oliveira or whoever it might be that's champion.
That's a really good point. And real quick, before I go into the breakdown of the fights, because that's one thing I wanted to touch on as well. I need to see Volkanovski beat Max Holloway a third time before I can say that he's the greatest featherweight champion of all time. Because right now, there's still an argument to be made, in my opinion, that Jose Aldo is the greatest featherweight champion of all time. Personally, in my opinion, I still think Max Holloway is the greatest featherweight champion of all time, but I would love to see that third fight just because of how close the second one was. And a lot of people, again, including myself, not trying to be too biased here, scored that second fight for Max Holloway. So that's the one thing. I want to see that third fight, just like Hunter said earlier. Those guys are meant to fight each other. It needs to happen a third time, and that's the fight to make at featherweight. Anyways, going into transitioning to the Keelan.
Just a quick point before we do move on.
Yeah.
I did not say Volk is the greatest featherweight of all time. I said he's the greatest right now champion.
Okay, well that's
the GOAT discussion is a long way off. As far as GOAT discussions go, I'm actually not against the Holloway argument. Do I think he's the greatest 145er right now? Yeah, I do.
See, hold on. Even I would say that McKee, in my opinion, or Pitbull, I think they're better than Volkanovski. Only because here's why.
Brave.
Yeah, because this is where like I wish we could have super fights because like McKee, like McKee has everything that like if Volk were to take him to that ground, McKee has that next level submission game, in my opinion, that could nullify, Volk's takedowns. And also like striking wise, I think Volk would, would have a tough time keeping up with the striking game of McKee, who's the current featherweight champion for Bellator. Patricio Pitbull, on the other hand, like he trains with Henry Cejudo. You understand this? Henry Cejudo's main mission right now has been to take down or find somebody to take down Alexander Volkanovski. So, in my opinion, if you want to put up to the two best guys, listen, I put in that there's an island right now for the featherweights of the best guys on the planet right now. It's Volkanovski and McKee on that island.
The McKee point is fascinating. However, I was saying the same thing, and all of us were about Ortega, why we thought he was going to beat Volkanovski, and it was for that exact same reason. So, like,
Ortega wears his damage too much, every time he gets punched.
But after the Korean Zombie fight, though, he looked like a different guy on the feet. He looked like he could just dominate. Plus the jiu-jitsu on the ground. I'd put Ortega over McKee on the ground. So, I don't know.
I just think it's that curse for Ortega that when the spotlight shines, just shines on him too much, and just you see it all over him.
For sure.
Yeah, anyway, Jack, go on. I'm sorry.
No, hey, we're good, but this is how we do it. Yeah, I love it. Anyway, so my thoughts on Jan versus Sterling. It was a very close fight. I scored the first round for Jan. I need to see, because Keelan, you made such a great argument there. For me, though, it looked like Jan still landed more than Aljamain Sterling in that. Or if it was dead even, or the strikes were maybe like 1 or 2 strikes for Aljamain Sterling in that fight, well, that's when Octagon Control comes into consideration to give him that round, if the round is that close, which it appeared that close to me, then it goes to the Octagon Control, which is why I give it to Peter Jan. So I need to see the Hunter, do you have him?
I'm here to support your argument here, Jack.
Of course you are. Peter.
It's us versus you guys now, okay?
Ireland's on its own again. Nothing new. This is number one.
Jack, real quick.
Yes.
If the strikes were, somewhat close like that, Keelan, I would say that Jan did more powerful strikes in general. Whenever Jan threw a punch and hit Sterling would have a wild reaction towards it. So I would have to give Jan the round just because not only did he strike just about the same, maybe Octagon Control too, but he did more damage with those strikes.
So you're gonna hit on Sterling because he had an anti-reaction to getting punched?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
But that's what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to. It was such a close round. It comes down to things like that, reaction times, who looks worse, and also when we're having a debate like this, we go to the experts, right? Which is just the MMA community as a whole. Verdict MMA. The majority of people scored round 1 for Petr Yan. It was like 9.74 goes to Petr Yan, which also backs up Hunter and I. So, anyways,
listen. Shout out to Verdict MMA.
Shout out Verdict.
Cool new platform that's on the rise. Yeah. They're really like the owner is like has this. It's crazy how they got it jump started. They're getting. The rub from absolutely everybody. It's a cool platform. Go check it out. But I honestly think that if you're gonna really break that round down, right? If you're really gonna nitpick it, you can base it on the nervous reaction because a lot of people slip and fall. Like, he reacted bad. Okay, yeah, he reacted badly. Am I gonna take No. That's just okay. I'm just reading stuff. It more happens like, okay, like did he do damage? Like, did whenever Jan landed, did he seem to take him a step back, or did it seem to change the tide of the fight? In my opinion, Jan didn't do much to change the tide of the fight in the first round. And in that case, since you're the champion, you're already winning. You understand? You
Yeah.
already have the champion's edge. So if Jan didn't do much to change the tide of the fight, and it has been even so, then the challenger has to go into the next round down, knowing that, hey, I need to step it up. And that was the big problem for me with Jan in that first round. And why I didn't give it to him was, things seemed very close, but did Jan do anything to change the tide of the fight that could say, like, hey, this was a crucial moment when I look at it, that this was that it moment that gave him the round? I didn't see any of that. Instead, all I saw was Jan being over aggressive, but still feeling out Aljo, just like he goes through every other fight.
I think that's a better argument for it than some of the other ones, because I think a great comparison for that. Now, I still score it for Jan, but I think a better comparison for that would be for the fight that we were there for in Houston, which was Whitaker Adesanya, where I again scored that fight 3-2 for Whitaker. But you can't be upset when Adesanya wins, because those rounds were so close. The championship edge is what would give him the thing. So if it was an even slate, I would still score that round for Jan, and honestly, I still score it for Jan. But the championship edge is a real thing, and I think that's a great point that you brought up.
Gents, Ric Flair said it best back in the day as part of the Four Horsemen. To be the man, you got to beat the man. And Petr Yan did not beat the man. I don't care if you scored it for Petr Yan. I don't care if Verdict scored it for Petr Yan. At the end of the day, you have to go out and decisively take that title. And Petr Yan didn't do it. If he'd have landed more damage in the first round, fair enough, I'm on your side there. I am genuinely. But he has no excuse for being so cautious in that opening round. You got to go out, you got to push the pace, and you got to put the hurt in Aljamain Sterling while he's there. And he didn't do it. Right, wrong, indifferent, yes, no, here, there, everywhere. Aljamain Sterling was on an equal level pretty much with Petr Yan in that first round. And to take the belt, you got to beat the champion. Can you say Petr Yan did that?
I don't know. The end looked pretty dominant to me. All I'm saying, the end looked pretty
I'm
dominant.
going to be that guy. I'm going to be that guy if I can step in.
Yeah.
What did Aljo do to Jan in the first
7
round?
minutes
That clearly states that Aljo is the champion. And did Aljo beat the man to become the champion?
That's a good point too.
Really
That's a good point
situation. Who's the man of the situation? Is it the one that gave
Don't
the
throw
belt or the
illegal
one who
strikes.
took the belt?
As much as you
I
might
can't
hate
believe this.
Aljo and his antics after he was awarded the belt, right? It is true. He never won the belt. I think that is a clear statement to be made, that he never won the belt. He was awarded and handed the belt due to a disqualification. And that was the whole reason why everybody was, against Aljo, because, like everybody in MMA, it's all about the combat spirit, right? The code of honor, and like it was, and the unwritten rule, like it was going against one of the biggest unwritten rules, that you can't win this way. You shouldn't win this way. That's why even the commentators were saying, like, why, I really think you shouldn't be able to win like that. But Jan made the mistake. He's not a little kid that you got to coddle him for the mistake he made. And I think the MMA community is doing him a great injustice by coddling Jan, by saying, oh, you know what, you're the real champion. No, you made the mistake. Pay the price. And he won. Like he was starting to pave the path towards gaining back what was rightfully his, right? But instead, when he arrived, he was met by a totally different man. Not the man he fought and he lost inadvertently the championship to, but a man who was worthy of holding on to the belt. And at the end of the day, like there's not just one ruby on that belt. You have to understand that belt is not done by just putting that one. There's multiple rubies to be inserted into that championship belt. So, and there's a long story for every champion, and we're just beginning to tell the story of Aljamain's championship reign. And like, as much as you want to hate on Jan did not. If Jan truly wanted to win that that belt back, he would have fought the perfect game plan. He would not have let that emotion. That was the key downfall of Petr Yan, in my opinion, was if he hadn't let that emotions control him in the beginning, he would be currently walking as champion right now.
I cannot believe you've just used the illegal knee as a stick to beat Aljamain Sterling with. That is the most ridiculous argument I have ever heard against Aljamain Sterling. Hunter, you're better than that. Come on.
I don't
Wait,
think
hold on.
illegal- I don't think
I thought mine
illegal
was
is the right word.
somewhat fair. The only point I was just trying to make was to be the man, you have to beat the man, and Aljo hasn't beat the man.
Don't illegally knee the man, then.
I'm not saying that.
Hunter has a valid
I see
point.
that
That's
they
what
gave
I'm
him the
saying.
belt.
That's what I'm saying.
And I'm saying that
Valid
Aljo didn't. Okay, you're obviously taking this out of terms, Keelan. I'm sorry. I'm just saying, man.
Think about it like this, right?
It's
It's like Ric Flair winning, like before he said that line, right? Before he said the line, it's like Ric Flair winning the championship because Arn Anderson came in, gave a spine buster, and basically dragged Ric Flair's limp body to cover him, and he won the championship that way. That's what Hunter's trying to say happened to Aljamain Sterling, which is, to a degree, he's got it right. Like, you have to understand, like, in order to be called a man, you truly have to dominatingly have a finish over or performance over him, which Aljo didn't have. So it's impossible to say, for Aljo to say, like, hey, I am the man. You're not. You're just carrying the title of the man. You know, like, it's like saying, like, hey, you're not the, like, the true king is elsewhere. You understand? Like, as long as Aljamain didn't have that victory, that, not a no contest, but a victory, or no, not a disqualification, but as long as he can get that W over Peter Yan, he's not the true king. And 90%, 95% of the from this fight, he actually attained that. He achieved that. He actually got the job done. But that 5%, like I said, he has not unified the division because of the split. Like, the moment the judge gave one of the scorecards to Peter Yan, that was the moment you knew that the job was not finished.
He's gonna have to beat TJ. And
he has to be TJ.
And honestly, that's with most new champions as it is. We often don't believe they're actually the champion until they beat one or two more contenders.
Yeah.
That might just be me because it's recency bias and I don't see Aljo being the champion yet. But I'm sure if he beats TJ, I'll reconsider.
The CEO of BPO.
Yeah, the CEO. I like that. Keelan, I'm taking that.
You are not. You are absolutely not. You've already got your little what the boss says. Jack, you need to move us on before we.
I do need to move us on. Like, this was amazing.
Listen, we might get dragged down for days.
We could talk. Yeah, like Kevin said, we could talk about this for days. The whole MMA community is in shambles right now over this fight. Let's go ahead and transition to the best of the best. And the best fight on that card was Khamzat Chimaev versus Gilbert Burns. It was incredible. Chimaev got the win by a decision. The question is, how would he fare against Kamaru Usman right now? Kevin, what do you think?
Oh, I think this was everybody's most anticipated fight coming into 2022 so far. Like, basically Chimaev has been playing around with the sheep, right? Even though he claims to be a wolf, he was playing around with the sheep. And for the first, he was going against one of the young, like the lion contenders, like the guy that will really draw it out of you, which is Gilbert Burns. And as much as we all wanted to see the knockout from Khamzat, and Khamzat wanted it too. That's the only reason, in my opinion, that this went 3 rounds was Khamzat wanted the knockout so badly that he was willing to go 3 rounds to search for it, right? And he could have done so many other things, like to get the victory, right? Because like he knocked him down. Like, in my opinion, I think everybody knows how and the groundwork has been laid on how to find the hole in Gilbert Burns game, which in the stand-up, which is switching like switching foots, which is switching from southpaw to traditional, right? And that's how Kamaru Usman got his finish, which is he transitioned from traditional into southpaw and led him with the power jab, and that knocked him down. And that's the same thing Khamzat did, which was transition into the power jab, and he got him knocked down. But Gilbert, for God knows that if he had the same spirit he had in the Usman fight, he could have been champion, in my opinion. This was the type of guy I wanted to see against Usman.
Yeah.
I wanted to see this type of performance where he really dug out the dog in Usman, which I like. In the beginning he did, but the moment Usman flipped the table on him, like he didn't seem to know what to do. But is Chimaev ready for Usman? I think he is. With the victory over Usman, I think he's maybe one fight away, because the Leon Edwards fight is very, very telling of what's next for Usman, which is I really don't know how that fight is going to go, because it's a very good fight. And Edwards has been longing, so I don't know how he's going to perform. But Chimaev against the current Usman, I think Usman's too slow for Chimaev's stand-up. So if Usman's going to beat Chimaev, it's going to have to rely on the grappling aspect of things. Because I saw the speed that Chimaev was still throwing it in the later rounds, and I compare that to the striking he had against Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal. And mind you, I think Chimaev wipes the mat with Jorge Masvidal if that fight came to be. So if Covington gets the upper hand on Masvidal on the striking, imagine what Chimaev would do. And all of this rallies back to the champion, which is Usman. And I think, in my opinion, Usman versus Chimaev might be that fight that determines where the division is heading.
That's a fair argument. I like it. A few days ago, I think it was Friday, Dana White came out with a statement saying that the winner of Chimaev versus Burns will probably face, if Chimaev wins against Burns, he'll probably face Colby Covington. And I got a little upset when I heard that, because I'm like, you know what? Maybe it should be a title shot. I don't believe that anymore. I think we need that Colby Covington fight, because we are now seeing that Khamzat is not invincible. He is beatable. We've seen it. He got knocked down against Burns. And first off, I just want to give credit to Burns here. I think, is it bad to say that I think that might have been Burns' best performance I've ever seen from Burns? I know he lost the fight, but that was a hell of a try to at least beat the rising wolf Khamzat Chimaev. Yeah. But back to my original point, Khamzat left everything in the octagon there. It was a very high-paced fight, but we saw him slow down a lot in the third round. We did see him get hurt a few times. We're seeing that Khamzat is not invincible. And now I want to see him face Colby Covington, because Colby Covington will truly, if you beat Colby Covington, there's no doubt in my mind you should get a title shot. Yeah. But I don't think you should just get a title shot because you beat Gilbert Burns. No offense to Gilbert Burns. But Colby Covington has one of the best cardios in the UFC. So if Chimaev can go 5 rounds with Colby Covington, or at least beat Colby Covington in that, then I would like that title shot now. I don't think he deserves it right now. I don't, not anymore. I think we're seeing that Colby Covington can do a lot of damage against anyone who's not the champion. So to see if that fight happen and go and keep going, it would be a great litmus test, as if you will. But if Farron gets a champion right now, I think that I would favor the champion here because of a few different things. I think if it's going to go 5 rounds, Kamaru Usman's great at stretching out the rounds to his favor. So I'm going to say that the longer the fight goes, the more it should go towards Kamaru Usman. I think Kamaru Usman's striking is probably a little bit more. He has more technique behind his strikes. Yeah. So they're more technical and they're more promising whenever he throws a shot that you think it's going to land. Khamzat now, from what I've seen, not every strike lands, not every takedown successful. Kamaru Usman is looking a little invincible in my eyes now. It's like they swap positions for me. Usman's now like the person who's like the man to beat. Khamzat's now the actual contender. Like I didn't see that like that before. But now that I see it like that, I think Usman wins the fight. I think Usman's wrestling and his wrestling are about on the same wavelength here, but I think the striking I would favor a little bit towards Usman. And I just think his fight IQ is a little bit smarter. So it's going to take him a long way for being a smarter fighter than facing just this new rising contender. But that's not the case here. I think Hamza has a lot of time to develop his skills here. That's also what I saw in that fight. Though he's still a little bit new, he's still a little bit green, and we can see that in some of the strikes he throws. You can tell there's room for improvement in that. And that if there's room for improvement still and you're just beat the number 2 contender in welterweight, there is a lot of potential in your future.
Yeah, this is a really, really interesting point now, because I don't think Hamzat would beat Usman. I actually don't. And there's quite a few reasons for this. Hunter, to his credit, has done a brilliant job of outlining most of them. When we look at Khamzat Chimaev, we really have to look at it both in isolation and in its context. In isolation, he's just fought Gilbert Burns, who got knocked out by Kamaru Usman. And he got knocked down really badly, and he had a lot of bad damage done to him as well. What that makes me wonder is, if you have a fighter whose boxing is more technically proficient and who's able to channel his power better in Kamaru Usman, what would he have done in that same situation? That makes me think he would have hurt him a lot worse than Gilbert Burns did. Furthermore, I think with Khamzat Chimaev, he fights to please the crowd, and that will be his downfall. If we look at that Gilbert Burns fight, he could have tried to take him down a lot more than he did. And of course he didn't. He kept the fight standing. Don't get me wrong, he had a lot of success in the first round, knocked Gilbert Burns down with a jab, nearly had him finished. But you can't always fight to please the crowd. You've got to fight to the style that suits your skills. And that's what Kamaru Usman does better than anybody. Kamaru Usman's boxing is better than Chimaev's, and I have no doubt his wrestling is better than Chimaev's. And that makes me think Kamaru Usman would beat him relatively easily. Not only that, Chimaev's not going 5 rounds, I don't think. His gas tank badly started to drain by the end of the third, which is why we saw the rock'em sock'em at the end of the fight, that and the crowd pleasing. So I have to see Khamzat Chimaev dominate an elite opponent over 3 rounds before I'm willing to consider the 5-round argument, period. And that brings us on to one Colby Chaos, call the cops, call him whatever you want, Covington. Colby Covington is, outside of Kamaru Usman, the standard bearer of the welterweight division. There is no doubt if Kamaru Usman was not a welterweight, Colby Covington would be the champion. He's proven that twice with 2 very good performances. I think Colby Covington would really hurt Khamzat Chimaev. The only advantage, Chimaev doesn't have any skill advantage over Covington or Usman. His only advantage are his physical attributes, not his skills. And that's what people are getting completely lost on. Colby Covington's wrestling is second only to Kamaru Usman's. So there's no disgrace in being second place to that. His striking is pressurized. I would like to see what Khamzat Chimaev does when he's backed up and not going forward. And you can bet that's what Colby Covington will do as well. Thirdly, I want to see Khamzat Chimaev get off his back when he's taken down by a Colby Covington or a Kamaru Usman. And I don't know if he would. I really, really don't. No offense to the guy whatsoever, but training with Darren Till is not going to train you for Kamaru Usman or Colby Covington. I think Khamzat Chimaev would lose quite comfortably to both of them. That's just my honest opinion. I need to see Chimaev beat Covington before I'm even remotely giving him an opportunity against Kamaru Usman, and that's just it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. For me, where I lie on this is I think, Keelan, you make some very valid arguments, right? But I think you might have bought a little bit too into just the performance of Khamzat Chimaev, because this is the only time we haven't seen him just completely walk through somebody. This is the first time he's fought a guy like Gilbert Burns. No one dominates Gilbert Burns. Not even the champion Usman dominated Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns is a phenomenal fighter and has earned that ranking. So on the surface, yeah, right now, no. I don't think he would beat him. Beforehand, maybe, yeah. But we need to see that Colby Covington fight. I think that Colby Covington fight is the perfect matchup for Khamzat Chimaev, because you could talk about everything and all the negatives that you could take away from the Burns fight. But for me, you can spin that. And I spin it as a positive thing, right? the where the fight was and the pace of the fight was dictated by Khamzat Chimaev. It was not dictated by Gilbert Burns. He decided he wanted to stand up and bang with them, and that's what they did. And then whenever Burns would try and take Chimaev down, it wasn't like Chimaev had it every single time, and Chimaev actually took Burns down twice. So if he had actually decided he wasn't, like Kevin said earlier, going for the knockout and just wanted a brawl, he might have been able to do that better. The gas tank is a valid point, just because he did start to slow down, but at the same time, I think he looked better in the third round than he did in the first round, because in the third round, at least he started to come on a little bit more and take more control of the fight. And I think he finished stronger than Gilbert Burns did, but Burns looked gassed completely at the end of the third round, whereas Chimaev looked like he was catching a bit of a second wind. If he was fighting more at his pace where he's used to doing takedowns and stuff, that might have gone differently. So yeah, I take a lot of positive takeaways away from it. I don't know if he would lose to Colby Covington. I know, Keelan, you said you favoring Colby Covington in that fight. I think I'm leaning towards Chimaev, to be honest with you. If he takes some time and works on his stuff, he's going to have the striking advantage in that fight. The wrestling advantage might be neutral. And if you're fighting at Khamzat Chimaev's pace for a lot of it, if he fights a smart fight as opposed to the Burns fight where he's going out trying to like just knock him out every 3 seconds, I might be favoring Chimaev in that fight a little bit. That's what I'm just so excited to see about, because we thought Burns was the real litmus test. I think it's Colby Covington now, and the pace and the cardio of Colby Covington. That's when we find out really if Usman's in trouble or not. But for right now, if we're saying right now, based off of what we know of Khamzat Chimaev, which is only 5 fights in the UFC, which is insane that we're talking about this, of course I'm leaning Usman in that fight. But with that, guys, let's go ahead and transition to the discussion of the week. And still relating to Khamzat Chimaev, he used to have the same manager of the champion, Kamaru Usman, that we were just talking about, Ali Abdelaziz. But he left due to conflicting interests. Just Kevin, what's your opinion on this specifically, but just fighter pay in general?
So obviously, Ali Abdelaziz controls what I think a monopoly of MMA fighters, to the point where I think he has, like, he can leverage his clients against a promotion. Listen, you can't blame what he does, because he does that in the interest of his clients. But then there are significant other people, like with the Cage Warriors and the UFC situation, right? Graham Boylan is the chief promoter of Warriors, and all the fighters he has under Cage Warriors, majority of them is signed under his management roster. So any fighter that goes from Cage Warriors to the UFC, majority of them are funneled in by him. Now, to me, Cage Warriors is getting a great deal with the UFC Fight Pass streaming service and everything. They're getting their PR rub from the UFC and all that. Getting, having the door open to them whenever anything UFC related is going on. But the problem is there's 2 conflicting areas here, which is a manager is supposed to look out for the best of his fighters, their interests. That's his priority. But when it comes to a promoter, he should not be considering just individual fighters. He has to be considering the promotion as a whole. Now, that means you can't serve 2 masters. That's always been the golden rule, right? The rule is you serve 1 master and 1 master only. And here he's serving 2 masters, but he's sacrificing someone else's interest, which is his fighters. Now, when his fighters like Paddy Pimblett are getting signed to the UFC, and he's getting paid 12 and 12, because, hey, that's what every other rookie fighter makes. True, I agree with you. But I think Paddy Pimblett has made it a pretty significant deal that when he signed to the UFC, he was more than just your regular UFC rookie, right? And because that's the case, when you're looking at something, you have to look at the overall value of the asset, and you have to pay him what he's worth. And that means also paying him some of his future value into this current deal. In my opinion, Graham Boylan should have got him a 50 and 50 deal, to start off his UFC contract. I think that's a fair deal for someone with the star power and the influence that Paddy Pimblett has. You understand? This man is very well connected with the MMA audience. He's like, if Conor McGregor could have a splash of DNA stolen from him, and someone went into a lab and went Dr. Frankenstein and created a star from the splotch of Conor's DNA, you would get Paddy Pimblett. From the hairstyle, from the Scouser accent, from his attitude of not giving a horse's ass about eating after the fight. Like you see him, he blows up like a freaking like a balloon. Like Conor McGregor said, it was like a freaking balloon. You know, like I seriously feel like if you chopped off Conor's balloon foot and put a mop over the head of the foot, it would look like a very, very horrible representation of Paddy Pimblett. But overall, the situation is like you cannot be managing. And here's another funny tidbit. If you don't want to sign with the UFC, you have to buy yourself out of his management service in order to go out and sign with another promotion, which is not right. If you're really looking out for the best interest, then you will say, hey, you know what, Bellator has a better offer, you should go sign with them. Not, hey, I can't believe you're doing this to me. I have a deal with the UFC. You should go with them because that's where the best thing is. No, not everybody. Look at Demetrius Johnson. I think he, even though, you know, one championship isn't like on every prestigious level that the UFC is on, they still pay their Demetrius Johnson. He's getting to do what he wants. He's getting to be himself. If that's what a fighter wants, that's what he wants. But then there are some fighters who are there for the money, right? Look at Michael Chandler, right? He was a championship caliber fighter, but the moment he lost he turned from a title contender into a prize fighter. And the same thing I think has applied to Dustin Poirier. He has went from being a title contender to being a prize fighter, right? And that's okay. Cool. But, you know, when you start out, like going back to the issue of the managers, you can't have conflicting interests, and you cannot be double dipping because you are not doing service to your fighters. And all he's doing is holding the sport back from, growing and advancing, because once people like Paddy getting paid, then the other stars who are slowly building themselves up will start getting pay rises and pay bonuses and everything like that. It all takes it's like taking small steps, like getting rid of the monopolies and the manager/promoter types are the way to go in order to advance the sport of MMA past the corruption, past all the black red flags that the sport has.
Kevin, that's a great explanation. It was really informative, and now I actually know a lot more than I did before about it. So very happy you said that. And there's really only one more thing I could touch upon here because I don't know too much about the topic itself. But I will say, if there's very few fighters like Paddy Pimblett who enters the UFC and has this much hype around them, and I agree that those fighters in particular should be getting paid more, because if you're marketing them before they even had their first fight in the UFC, like ergo Michael Chandler, Paddy Pimblett, Sean O'Malley, Conor McGregor, those fighters are special in the fact that they already have like this cult following before they enter the UFC. So if you're already having this following and you're going to guarantee that, say, I think Paddy Pimblett has like over like 2 million followers on Instagram now. Paddy Pimblett's going to have most of those followers watch his fight now. Like those fighters that have a following already and they're going to bring them over to the UFC means that fighter should be getting paid more because more people are tuning in to watch them. And I like that. I like that argument. I'm going to stick with that argument, and I'm going to shut my mouth because I don't know much else about this.
Fighter pay then.
Yeah.
Right. So as we were discussing there before our imminent epic presentation, Kevin made a really good point about the whole fighter pay issue. The thing is, for those of you who are boxing fans, you will have, or even if you're not a boxing fan, you will have heard of one Don King. Now, Don King, in the eyes of many, was a great agent, but he's also one of the most corrupt people who's ever taken part in boxing. Bob Arum's another one at Top Rank. I see you, Bob. And let's face it, MMA is still very, very unregulated, very new sport, and it's like the Wild West of legality. the gaps are still wide open for corruption and for nefarious people to take charge of prominent people, manipulate their interests to serve their own. It's a story as old as time, and I'm sure we've all seen many examples of that. And, the example that was used there was Hamzat Shamayev and Ali Abdelaziz, of course. And it's a great example to use. The thing with Ali Abdelaziz, and I'll move on to Graham Boylan in a minute because he fits the mold pretty well here. The thing with Ali Abdelaziz is his fighters get title shots. His fighters move up the ranks pretty quickly. And look, his fighters are very good fighters. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're bums who get title shots out of no deserving whatsoever. But there's never a backlog with them. They're always straight up there. Now, I'm not implying anything one way or the other because I'm not about to get a slander case from Ali Abdelaziz's agency. But I'm simply putting it out there that either Ali Abdelaziz is simply a brilliant agent or Dana White respects him enough to keep things easy and to make sure that things keep moving and money keeps flowing. Now, business is business. America's built in capitalism. I have no problem with that. But it does make you wonder whether people are losing out potentially because of the agreements that certain figures have with one another. Now, that's for you to decide. It's not for me to call. But this is where Graham Boylan comes in. And Paddy Pimblett is just one of many examples out there. Paddy Pimblett, like Hunter and Kevin have both said brilliantly, I don't need to repeat it, 12 and 12 contract, which is ridiculous because Paddy Pimblett is no standard debutant to the UFC. Every Cage Warriors event he had, whether it was in London, Liverpool, Manchester, whatever part of England it was in, sold out every single night easily. He's one of the biggest draws UK MMA has ever seen, probably ever will see. So to have him on a 12 and 12 contract with a 50k bonus is ridiculous no matter what way you split it. I agree with Kevin. Should be 50 and 50 with a 50 bonus. That makes 350s, which is 150. That is the type of contract we need to be. See, quick maths.
We're following
on
the
MMA island.
Yeah.
We're on the math island now.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. The point is that people like Paddy Pimblett should be on much better contracts because they're the ones selling the cards. That's just a fact. It's like, for example, Molly McCann sold that fight. She's slightly
He
different.
got paid.
So she
Yeah.
but she at least did get paid. The point with people like Paddy Pimblett and people like Sean O'Malley as well is another example that should be used. Sean O'Malley has millions of followers on social media. I mean, I don't know about his Twitter or anything, but I'm sure he does. He's got a thriving Twitch channel from what I hear. He's got his own podcast, which is actually very good. I am a big fan of it. He's got his own weed product line as well. The guy's in business. He's smart, or he has very smart people working for him. Either way, he's smart enough to know he needs smart people, and that's the true smartness. The point is this: they need better contracts because they're the bigger draws. And the people who are bringing in the most money should get the most money. It's simple. It's A to B to C to D. Simple flow diagram. And I do have to wonder what the arrangements are with these people because it seems that certain things are not going the way they should. Now, a la Graham Boylan, the prominent example of the evening that we're using here, Cage Warriors is very prominently featured in the UFC Fight Pass. You have to, Graham Boylan's big selling point for Cage Warriors, the big tagline in every poster is, we've had 9 people go to the UFC. We've had 10 people go to the UFC. Now, such blatant advertising would tell me there is something in place between Graham and between Dana. And the Cage Warriors become a cheap factory line for the UFC in return for constant promotion and endorsement on the Fight Pass that's sold by ESPN. And everybody goes home happy and everybody goes home with money. Now, this is simply my take on it because I'm with Hunter. I don't know much more about it beyond that. However, being from a legal background, it's something I will be researching a lot more and I want to be more knowledgeable on. But for now, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, you guys said a lot and you guys nailed it. The only thing that I'm going to add on, because you guys have talked about it in detail and everything, the only thing is that someone needs to set precedent for it because we haven't had that yet. Someone needs to finally take the first step. Some sort of manager, fighter themselves, if it takes that for the fighter to negotiate the contract for themselves, if it takes that far, some new fighter that comes into the UFC needs to request a 50-50 contract. And from that point on, that needs to be the new precedent, the new standard for fighters We talked to someone in August. Kevin and I did. I'm not going to say the name, but the money that they're getting is not what they deserve or what they're putting out there. And after taxes and everything, especially for these prelim guys, it's not enough. It's not enough. And if you're in the UFC, which is the main promotion in the world, it's the premier promotion for mixed martial arts. It's what everyone watches, what everyone looks up to is the UFC. These guys and girls deserve to be getting paid more than a 12-12 contract. Big name or not, I'd like to see 50-50s applied to most fighters in the UFC, if not all prelim fighters, as a base contract. However, especially for the Paddy Pimblets, I'd even put the Ian Garys in that conversation, guys that are going to be doing that. I think they should be getting 50-50s. We just need someone to take the first step, set that as the new standard, and then, of course, for all the other fighters to join in on that and request 50-50s from that point on. That's how real change happens. We'll see if it happens.
And all right, so here we go. Here is the segment for the day from Ariel Helwani.
There we go.
We got it. Boom.
Okay.
That came out and said it's about time someone speaks of this conflict of interest where you have someone acting as a promoter, signing people to the promotion, and then funneling them to the UFC, signing these deals that, if we're being honest, don't really seem fair for the clients. I'm arguing on behalf of Paddy Pimblett, deserving more. So I don't know why he would be upset about any of this, and I don't know if he is. Meanwhile, you're in a business relationship with the entity that you are supposed to be negotiating with. You're getting money from that streaming deal. You're telling me that there's not a ton of conflicts of interest there? And the response is clickbait? That's the response? That's the best you got? Clickbait? What clickbait? What are you talking about? Oh, yeah. I want people to watch this show. No, you know what? I'd rather watch this show. I'd rather do this show when there's 5 people watching. That's way better. Like, what? What are you talking about? Of course I want people to watch the show. I'm not lying to people. I'm not hiding from things. I'm not trying to give them the old bait and switch. That would be closer to clickbait. This is just the truth. And there's a lot of these situations, like the one that this man Isaac brings up in this sport. This sport is filled with conflicts of interest, filled with them. And by the way, I'll raise my hand. I was once in that conflict of interest with Fox. Biggest regret of my life, biggest regret of my career. I can come out and talk about it and say, you know what? I effed up. I'm comfortable enough saying that. You won't get that from a lot of the people in this sport. They won't tell you that. They'll just keep trying to make their bucks and, cut these bad deals and try to, make money from both sides of the fence. Things that in boxing, the sport that we love to point our finger at and say that sport is corrupt, that sport has problems, that sport needs to be fixed. I would argue we should point the finger at ourselves because this sport has a lot more issues than that one, especially when it comes to the fighters.
Well said,
Reginald,
Ariel. Well
Ariel,
said.
appreciate the work.
So obviously, as you can tell, clearly Ariel has a feeling, because Graham Boylan called out Ariel when Ariel didn't make a big deal out of it. He was just reporting as it is. And Graham, to me, when you react like that, like the way Graham reacted and called him clickbait and all that, to me, that's where I feel like, oh, he poked at a sensitive area there. Apparently Ariel caught some whiff of smoke, and Graham Boylan didn't want him to see where the fire was, and that's why he started lashing out at him. And listen, it's not a pretty situation, because in my opinion, I feel like if Graham Boylan didn't respond at all, this would have just blown over. You understand?
Yeah.
But by giving Ariel the platform of, hey, I am the guy that runs Cage Warriors, I'm going to retaliate to what you said to me, he has just put himself in a more negative light.
Yeah.
Right? Even if he's right, no matter how right he is, by choosing to go after Ariel, and because Ariel was talking about you, right? A lot of people talk about a lot of people, but the moment it becomes serious is when the other person shines a spotlight on that situation. And all he did was shine a spotlight. There was no spotlight. And Graham Boylan literally yanked the spotlight and yanked it on himself, which is, he shot himself in the foot by responding. Now, all of this is just the calm before the storm, guys. This is literally the beginning of what is yet to come. All right, because the UFC and MMA is like this city of Atlantis. In my opinion, the tsunami wave that's about to hit it with the fighter pay is gonna flip the table. It's uh, it's gonna change the course of combat sports. So I would be weary of what's going on. Like fighter pay will be a very crucial matter that's spoken about in the next year or so, because in my opinion, if people like Paige Van Sant can get big money offers, I think Patty Pimblett should be getting at the 50-50K minimum.
Yeah.
So like if there are so many other stars, listen, people like Andrei Arlovsky, Alexei Olenek, they deserve the money they're getting paid, because man, that man's got 65 wins in the octagon, right? Andrei Arlovsky's been fighting in the UFC since 1990. I don't know when, right? That's why they get paid for that much. But then, but if there are stars coming in that, hey, unlike Arlovsky, I don't have the age, and the experience on me, but I build a brand. I built something that you can use to build your brand, then you should get paid. And Conor McGregor, like I said, has established that, hey, if you can build a following, you deserve to get paid.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the UFC PR machine is gonna suck that charisma, all that brand, the whatever you build, they're gonna use that to help you build yourself. So, everybody deserves their due. And stars that are coming like Ian Gary, he shouldn't be getting, like, I don't know how much he is getting paid right now, but he belongs in that. Like, I feel like any guy that comes out of Ireland that's got yeah, like people like Keelan, but I'm just saying, like, people from the UK scene that have real following behind them, right? The UK market is a very small market compared to the US market. So if you got a big following in the complete UK scene, that means you're that guy. In the US, it's harder to do that because there's a lot of area to cover. But in the UK, like, it's not that big. It's like, if anything, it's the size of Texas. You understand?
Not even the size of Texas, not even close.
Exactly. The whole of UK is not even the size of Texas. So imagine if you can be the king of Texas, you could be the king of UK. That's the way I view it as. So all of these guys that are coming from these isolated markets, if you're like coming from a country, oh my God, like, and you're the only guy from that country, oh my God, that's your whole marketing point. Be like, you're about to build the next Antarctic champion of the world. If you're coming from Antarctica, right, and you're the only guy from there, you tell the UFC, hey, I am the next Antarctican champion. That's what you're going to market me as. I come from the depths of the freezing hell of Antarctica, and I am here to freeze all divisions, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Boom. There you go. So all these stars that have that selling point, if they have a selling point, they should get paid more. That's it. Right? Because you're bringing something to the table that no one else is, which is that selling point. How am I going to market you? Because there are a lot of these fighters that are, let's be honest, the generic fighters that just talk the talk, they walk the walk, but there's nothing special about them. Right? So the UFC has to do something more just to promote them and sell them to the audience that they have. But people like Patty, oh, hell yeah, we know who Patty is. We can sell him to the fighters. We can do whatever we want with send him to a meet and greet in Phoenix, Arizona. They're going to line up. Send him to a meet and greet in Brazil. They're still going to line up. Put him to a meet and greet anywhere. They're going to line up. That's how good of a star Patty Pimblett is. And that is why people in his position and people like him deserve to get paid more. And if they can't find that opportunity in the UFC, they don't have to pay out or buy out their contract just to go find that better opportunity, because Graham Boylan's duty and his code of ethics should tell him, hey, if that deal is not with the UFC, it should be with Bellator, it should be with PFL, or it should be with One Championship, or it should still be with him. It should be with Cage Warriors. If the UFC is not offering the right money for a star that you built, then be prepared yourself to pay him that money, because you know how much he's worth. You should be able to be like, hey, listen, I built you up. I should be able to pay you. And it's not like he's some rinky dink promotion now. He is the official UK promotion that funnels the stars to the UFC. If you want the that bridge to the UFC, it's Cage Warriors.
Yeah.
You understand? So there shouldn't be a second thought about this. Like, like every star that's under the Graham Boylan management, I really should think like, hey, is Graham Boylan? I'm pretty sure he's taking care of the stars. In my opinion, I'm pretty sure he takes care of the stars. But what about the second wave, the young amateur fighters, the fighters that are paving their paths into being the Paddy Pimblets? Is he really taking care of them? Is he giving them the best deal? If not, I think you should go into another management. Like I think there's a management team in the UK called Aris Fight Management. They're pretty new. Go check them out. Quick shout out right there,
Yeah.
giving the rub as much as I can. But yeah, guys, like this is a serious topic because all Graham Boylan is doing is letting people like Logan Paul chat out, or not Logan Paul, Jake Paul.
Yeah.
Jake Paul talk out of their ass about fighter pay. All he's doing is literally Graham Boylan is the reason Jake Paul has the right to talk and open his mouth and talk about fighter pay. Because if Graham Boylan wasn't doing the practices that he is doing right now, Jake Paul doesn't even have an ounce of argument against fighter pay. He will have to sit there and keep begging Conor McGregor for the money fight. But because there's practices like this, because he's not a true boxer, right? He's a YouTuber who became a boxer. He has the right to even, curse out boxing, curse out MMA, say whatever he wants, because he has no allegiance to nobody, only to himself. You understand? He's not even doing this for the other fight. He's doing this for himself, so he can gain the most out of this. And people like Graham Boylan, all they're doing is feeding into that fuel that is for Jake Paul.
Yeah. I don't think any of us could have said that better. That was like a perfect speech on fighter pay. I think I don't know about you, I think that's the perfect way to end off the podcast because that was phenomenal. So with that, everyone, please make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Listen to us everywhere, literally everywhere, including iTunes and Spotify. Check out and follow our Instagram at MMA.island and check out our website, MMAisland.net. Kevin, you were a phenomenal guest. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. You've been amazing as always. Chatting with the Three Musketeers from the MMA Island podcast has been amazing. Just, to all the MMA Island subscribers, to the MMA Island TV subscribers, stay tuned. I think MMA Island is about to embark on a very new wave. So there's only good things coming ahead. So stay tuned, guys. And thank you for having me.